Welcome to the Shir in Lakotei Sichos Chelek Tezayin Mishpatim Aleph. This is a very exciting Sicha. It is selected by the Oitzer Lakotei Sichos compilation of key Sichos as the Chassidus on the Parsha Sicha, because in it describes the Chassidus approach to an understanding of Mishpatim, of all of the mitzvahs that we understand rationally, that we grasp intelligently, that even had they not been given, we may have come to similar conclusions. This whole concept of intellect and faith, of that which is understanding and how it interacts with that which is beyond understanding, is described in this Sicha. In order to understand it, we need some station identification. Where are we? Last week in Parshas Yisro, at the end in Shishi, we had the Maimed Har Sinai, the giving of the Aseres HaDibros. The people saw Vayar Ha'am Vayanu. The people saw and they trembled. They stood far away. And then the Torah continues after the Aseres HaDibros and the Shvi over there with follow-up mitzvahs, and then our parsha begins. V'eila ha-mishpatim asher tosim lifneihem. Parshas Mishpatim has 53 mitzvahs. Most of them involve civil and criminal law. Hence the name Mishpatim, which mean laws that are self-understood. We deal with the treatment of slaves, property damages, personal injury, and more. Up until midway through the 5th Aliyah. At that point, the Torah begins mentioning the Shalosh Regalim, talks about some of the religious laws, and it concludes with the prohibition of Loi Sevashel Gedi Bachalev Imoy, not to cook milk with meat together, which is a choik, a mitzvah that has no rationale. And then, in the 7th Aliyah of Mishpatim, the Torah reverts back and fills in the rest of the story with regard to the preparations for Matan Torah. And it's here in the 7th Aliyah of Mishpatim where we learn the foundational Nasa V'Nishma story. So again, Yisro, preparations for Matan Torah. Mishpatim, almost five aliyahs dealing with the rational law, civil law, and then we revert back. We talk about a choik, and then we revert back to the story of the giving of the Torah. And this is what the Sikha is going to describe, these three steps. The Matan Torah that precedes the Mishpatim, precedes the intellectual approach and the approach of understanding, and then the coming back to the Matan Torah Nasa V'Nishma. 3 steps. The Rabbi opens our Sicha with the name Mishpatim. Like we said, Mishpatim implies rational law, which is self-understood. Even if these laws wouldn't have been given, on some level, we would have arrived at some similar conclusions or an aspect of these laws on our own. Now the thing is, this is the name of the entire Parsha, up until the very end of the Parsha, which we said, the end of the Parsha is as Moshe is going up the mountain, getting ready for Har Sinai. So that we have to understand, why is the story of Moshe climbing the mountain, getting ready for Har Sinai, approaching Sinai, included in the Parsha of Mishpatim? As a matter of fact, like we said, the story, the famous story of Nasa V'Nishma, that the Jewish people, prior to receiving the Torah, they say, we will do whatever it is, and only then will we try to understand. That story is here in the Parsha called Mishpatim, the Parsha of rationalization, or of rational understanding, which can be rationally understood. Seemingly contrary to the concept of Mishpatim. Nasa V'Nishma is the idea that we don't need to understand, we're just going to do. Maybe we'll figure it out later. And to the point that in this parsha we also have a choik, a law which is completely beyond comprehension, the prohibition of cooking milk and meat. And yet, this is all called Mishpatim. So why does the end of the parsha, the choik, the Nasav and Ishma, the going up to Sinai, how is that included in Mishpatim? As usual, the Rabbi offers a possible resolution, which is in the Mechilta. Rabbi Yishmael says, why does our parsha start off with the words Ve'ele, and these are Hamishpatim, and these are the laws that he placed in front of them, says Rabbi Yishmael in the Mechilta, because we want to make a connection. The Vav is a continuation, a hook to the previous story, just like we had learned before. Ma elu misinai, just like we learned about the Matan Torah and the Aseres Dibros which are given at Sinai, af elu, so to these mitzvahs were also given at Sinai. All the Mishpatim are given at Sinai. And as Chassidus explains, Rabbi Yishmael is not just telling us where the Mishpatim come from, that they come from Sinai, but he's telling us that our approach to Mishpatim, even the rational law, the laws of guardianship, laws of property damage, we need to approach them with the knowledge that we are actually doing them because Hashem said them at Sinai. As much as we understand, the truth is that they're beyond understanding. So perhaps the reason that the Torah puts the story of Nasav and Ishma and a Choik in Mishpatim is to remind us that on a deeper level, even the Mishpatim have to be done and approached with the Kabbalah's oil of a Choik, with accepting we're doing it because this is what Hashem said, just like we do a Choik. However, this doesn't satisfactorily explain why the parsha called Mishpatim would include the story of Nasav and Ishma, would include this the Choik. Because number one, this is an opinion of Rabbi Yishmael in the Mechilta. There's actually an opinion, another opinion in the Mechilta that says that the parsha of Mishpatim was said in Mara. That's the opinion brought in the Medrash. Rashi brings the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael, that this is said after Har Sinai. The Medrash brings the other opinion, that it was said prior to the giving of the Torah. Prior to the receiving of the Torah, they had already received the Mishpatim. So this whole idea of the continuation of Misinai doesn't line up according to the alternative explanation in the Medrash. And number two is that, if anything, the idea of a parsha called Mishpatim, including aspects of Choik, including aspects of Nasav and Ishma, indicates that the Choik and the Nasav and Ishma are also called Mishpatim. They don't indicate that Mishpatim are really Chukim. If you would want to say that the Mishpatim are called Chukim, so you would put Mishpatim in a section called Choik. Here it's the opposite. We put Chukim in a section called Mishpatim. So our focus here is that the Choik, is that the Nasav and Ishma is in the Mishpatim, is somehow in part of the rational law, part of the approachable law, the understood law, even that which is by definition beyond our understanding. So, to understand this, what are these mishpatim? What is it about the rational law that includes the choik, then includes the Nasa v'Nishma. So we go back and we ask the general question. Why do these Mishpatim come in the Torah immediately after Matan Torah? Immediately after Matan Torah, we're told all the laws that can be rationally understood, that we could have arrived at similar conclusions ourselves. First of all, we're taught in the Gemara that even if the Torah hadn't been given, we would have learned many of these laws. So why tell it to us right after the Torah is given? And even more, according to the Ramban, the idea that Bnei Noach have to have a system of dinim, a system of courts, which is one of the Sheva mitzvahs Bnei Noach, something that the Yidden were instructed even prior to Matan Torah, is not just that they have to have a legal system, but that legal system needs to include and needs to legislate all of the laws that are required for a civilization. Like theft, cheating, guardianships. So not only is it that we would have known the halachas of Mishpatim, we would have learned them from kind of a natural law, but even more, the Yidden were actually instructed about Mishpatim, about these very laws, as Bnei Noach. Prior to the giving of the Torah, they were instructed to have a system that legislates these laws in a fair and true manner. So why, immediately after giving the Torah, does the Torah go on and talk about halachas laws that A, we would have known, and B, we were already instructed? Thus, it's clear that the Torah is telling us something here. That yes, Matan Torah begins with that which is higher than Seichel. Matan Torah is the super rationale. Matan Torah is beyond our understanding. It is a revelation far greater than us. But what happens immediately after Matan Torah? This revelation is brought out specifically through Mishpatim, through laws of understanding. In other words, we move on into the laws that we can comprehend and understand. Then, after those laws, we return to the story of Matan Torah. So we have 3 steps: Matan Torah, Mishpatim, return to the story of Matan Torah. But the returning to the story of Matan Torah is called Mishpatim. So again, we have the super rationale, Matan Torah, rational, Mishpatim, and then we have the super rational back to Matan Torah, but included in a section called Mishpatim, included in a concept of understanding and rationale. Yisroi, Mishpatim, end of Mishpatim. 3 steps. This is the key to the Sikha, these 3 steps. Greater than understanding, that which cannot be understood, that which is understood, and that which is far greater and beyond our understanding, but comes in the context of understanding. 1, 2, 3. So now, to talk about these 3 steps, this Yisroi, super rational, Mishpatim, the rational law, and then the super rational as it comes into the rationale. So the Rabbi quotes and talks about a very famous shalah. And I want to teach it to you inside because it's so fun. It's very foundational, and foundational to the Sikha and foundational in the Chassidus. So the Shalom writes that Shoresh Hashirashim, the root of all roots, is v'yodaita hayoim v'ashavaysa levavecha. One should know and one should take to heart. Ki Hashem hu ha'elikim. Retzaloimar, what he means to say is that we have to know in our hearts. You should know and take to heart. In addition to the Emunah and the Kabbalah and that which is the tradition which we received from our fathers. In other words, we have to know, not just be taught, not just be told. And that's what he explains. He says, that's what the pasuk says, Da eselekei avicha. Know the God of your fathers. He says, Noi safamashe hukba emunah belibcha mitzad avicha. In addition to the emunah that you have in Hashem, which comes because of your father. The hainu, what does that mean because of your father? Hakabbalah ish mipi ish, the tradition. We pass on from generation to generation that there's an Eibishter, and I have to believe in the Eibishter. We're instructed, Da ato ba'atzmecha mitzad hasaga. You yourself need to know and intellectually grasp Hashem. And here, the Shalosh says that there's a remes to this. In the Shira, the Yidden say, Zeh keli ve'anvehu. This is my God, and I will build him a home. Elikei Ovi, it's the God of my father, V'aroi mimenu, and I will exalt him. Says the Shalom. Roitzeloimar, what is it? What is the pasuk telling us? Like this. Kishezeh keli, when this is my God. What does it mean, my God? Shehu keli, it's my God. Mitzad hasagosi. V'yidiyasi, because I grasp and I know him. So then, v'anvehu, I will build him a home. But the word v'anvehu is actually, can be made up of two words. Ani v'hu. It is I and him. Right, so Leimer meaning to say, Ani v'hu, I and him. Dvukim biyachad, kaviyachol. It's as if we become attached. Because the knowledge of Hashem is grasped in my heart, and I become attached to Hashem. So when it's Zekeli, this is my God, because I get to know him, because I understand him, because it's in my heart, then it's Ani v'hu, I and him become one. However, if I don't know Hashem, and it's only because of Elikei Ovi, because it's the God of my fathers, I am taught that there's Hashem, then V'aroi mimenu, I will exalt him. I declare how high he is. Because he is greater than me. He is distant from me. Look. And I feel in my heart a distance from Hashem. And therefore, the Shalach concludes a person has an obligation to not just believe and receive a tradition of Hashem, but he has to get to know Hashem as much as he can. Because when we only believe, we feel distant. But when we get to know, when we feel that we know Hashem, then va'ani v'hu, then I feel close to Hashem. I feel attached to Hashem. Now the Rabbi asks a question. The Rishalah says, if it's Zeh Keli, this is my God, then Va'anveyu, I build him a home. I become one with him. When it's Elokei Avi, the God of my fathers, Va'arei Memenu, he is distant from me. Therefore, we have to not only receive the tradition, we need to try best we can to grasp, understand, and intellectually connect. However, seemingly this pasuk is out of order according to this. Because isn't it that the person first has emunah, then has yediyah? I mean, the Shalom wrote about this. In other words, in addition to the tradition, you have to get to know. So the pasuk should have said, Elokei Avi v'arei mimenu, the God of my fathers, but he's distant from me. Zakeli, then when it becomes my God, v'anveyu, then we become attached. So the pasuk puts the this is my God first, the yediyah first, and then the emunah. Doesn't the emunah come first and then the yediyah? So an answer is because we're not talking about the emunah that comes before yediyah. We're talking about a type of emunah that comes once we've maximized our yediyah, once we've learned and gotten to know as much as we can. Then there's a level of emunah which is beyond what we know. So Zakeli v'anveyu, this is the God, my God, and I connect to him deeply. And then Elokei Avi, then there's a level of emunah that I cannot connect to. So we're talking about the emunah that comes after yediyah. When I realize that as much as I know, there's so much that I don't know. So the Rabbi asks, but what about the original emunah? In other words, a person has to have emunah, but a child is born, he has emunah, he's told, his father teaches him about Hashem. Then he develops yediyah, knows Hashem as best he can, and then there's the emunah that comes after the yediyah. So Zakeli, as much as I know, we become attached, and then there's the emunah that comes after. But what about the original emunah? Why is that not mentioned altogether? So again, the parallel, the three steps, the original emunah, the yediyah, and the emunah that comes after. You see the parallel, the three over here, like the Yisroi, Mishpatim, Matan Torah after Mishpatim. But here the Rebbe says, what happened to that original emunah that's not mentioned altogether? And now we go back to the classic purpose of the giving of the Torah. The Torah is given in order that hatachtoinim yalu l'maylo. Why is the Torah given? There should be the bittul of the gzer of the elyon and tachton, and the tachton, the lower, those who are the lower realm, can go up, can become elevated, and the elyonim and the higher realms can come down. And the Eibishter says, Vani hamaschil. And I'll start, as it says, Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai. So here too, we're going to have the three steps. When we talk about the tachtoin, that in the lower realm, going up to the elyon, it doesn't mean that the tachton should not be a tachton anymore. It doesn't mean that, in other words, the focus is that the tachtonim yalu, that the human being in human condition goes up and becomes attached. Doesn't lose their humanity. Doesn't become angelic-like. Rather, as they are, as we are, we're able to connect with that which is so much greater and far beyond us. That's why it's not enough for Hashem to come down on Sinai. Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai. Because what happens when Hashem comes down on Sinai? There's a revelation of Hashem, of the Elyon. But the Tachton, the created beings, they don't feel, they don't sense connection. They sense bittul. They become overwhelmed. They lose their sense of identity. The Yidden become, what happens by Matan Torah? The Yidden become batal. They become afraid. And the world becomes silent. The world at large ceases to be in its state. It enters a state of bittul. It's overwhelmed by the divine presence. How does the Tachton go up, become connected to the Elyon, to the higher realm, to the spiritual realm, to the godly? Is not through being overwhelmed by the presence of godliness, but it's through the responding in kind and by going up and going up and connecting and trying to reach the level of becoming an Elyon. So why does Hashem come down the mountain first? Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai. If the purpose is for the Tachton to go up, and that has to happen through the Tachton, because through that revelation and through that bittul, we are conditioned to be able to then go up to the Elyon. So Hashem reveals himself at Sinai to us, causing a sense of bittul within us, which conditions us to then be able to go up, and for the Tachton, now it remains a Tachton, but it can then become and can lift itself up to connect a little bit with the Elyon. So this is step 1 and step 2. Step 1 is the revelation from Hashem. Step 2 is the response of the Tachton, of humanity. In Avodas Hashem, these 2 steps are what the Shalom told us about Emunah and Yediyah. First, we begin with Emunah. We have Emunah. We're born with it. It's a gift. It's not something that we work on with our efforts. And a person has Emunah. His Emunah is shining. He's doing Hashem's will. But he feels distant from Hashem, because it's not him. It's a revelation of Hashem. It's a belief and it's a knowledge or a sense of the truth of godliness. When a person toils and understanding godliness from his own labor, he works hard, then he becomes one with the divine. Then he has Yediyah. Like we said, Va'anvehu, Anivahu. It's not just the Emunah, but he works and develops internally this sense of connection. Va'anvehu, Anivahu. Yet, like by Matan Torah, first Hashem had to come down to create the condition for the Tachton to go up. So in order for the Emunah, in order for the Yediyah to be possible, in order for our connection to be possible, so we have to first have the gift of Emunah. Because just Yediyah, just trying to work on it and find things in a very seichelic manner, is dangerous. Seichel can make a mistake. Seichel can come up short. It's very subjective. So we begin with emunah, with the sense of belief in Hashem. And now we can develop a sense of yediyah. That's the Yisrael story of Matan Torah, followed by Mishpatim. Yisrael's Matan Torah, Hashem coming down, the idea of emunah, the idea of bittul. In Yisrael, vayaram vayanu, we cease to exist. It's just a revelation of the divine, an overwhelming revelation of the divine. What's the next step? Step 2 is the idea of Mishpatim, the idea of we have to start to become connected, we have to start to understand Elikos, Seichel, to understand the divine wisdom, and create an attachment with the divine through being ourselves, who we are, thinking individuals, rational individuals, intellectual individuals, and trying to connect with Hashem best we can in response to the Yisrael. Begins the work of Mishpatim, of developing it internally within. And this is the purpose of Matan Torah. The purpose of Matan Torah is that we, as the Tachtoinim, become connected with the Elyonim. Dira b'Tachtoinim, right? There's the Dira, the home, but in the Tachtoinim, we have to remain Tachtoinim. We can't be lost as Tachtoinim, overwhelmed as Tachtoinim, but we remain Tachtoinim. So, this is step 1 and step 2, Yisrael and Mishpatim. First there's Yisrael, then there's Mishpatim. First is Matan Torah, the overwhelming revelation of Gilui, of revelation of Elikos. And then there's the really understood aspect of mitzvahs, which really talks about and lends credence to, and lends, is support to who we are as we are. The Elyonim coming down, the Tachtoinim going up. And like we said, all of this, it begins with a gift from the divine, and then there's our response, our development, our personal development as we develop. Emunah, which is the gift of Emunah, and then there's Yediyah. All different aspects and different ideas of the first step, the gift from above, and then there is our response. But we need the gift. We need to start with Emunah. We need Matan Torah to create the bittul, in order to then lead on the proper path for the Tachtoinim to go up, for the Yediyah to be true. So that's why, on the level of Pshat, like Rashi brings, on the level of, in the Pshutei Shel Mikra, the Mishpatim come after Matan Torah. Because in Pshutei Shel Mikra, somebody who's on the level of Pshat, who's a beginner, they don't have the feelings of Avas Hashem, Yiras Hashem. So they can't just rely on intellectually finding the truth, discovering the truth of Mishpatim. Their Nefesh Ba'amis is still very strong, they're very, very subjective. So on that level, they have to first have the Aseres HaDibros, the bittul, and then when they feel with that sense of awe, with that sense of loss of self, they can approach Mishpat. One can approach the level of Mishpat. In Avodah, there are times when a person is not ready to just simply approach the truth. And they need to, like the Gemara says, Yargiz the Adam Yetzer Tov Yetzer. They have to upset the Yetzer Tov. They have to scream at their Yetzer Hara. They have to upset the Yetzer Tov over the Yetzer Hara. They have to work up the Yetzer Tov. They have to break the Yetzer Hara. Because only through a sense of bittul are they ready to intellectually understand, to approach with intellectual honesty, with integrity, to arrive at the right conclusion. but on a drush level, in the Medrash. The section of Mishpatim in the Medrash says was actually taught prior to Matan Torah. It was taught in Mara. Because once somebody attains a level of drush, once somebody attains a level that they have a sense of connection, they're beyond the pshat level, they're not the beginning where they have ava and they have yira. They're actually already on the path. They don't need that bittul to approach the truth anymore. And they don't need the sense of yargas to upset their Yetzer Tov over the Yetzara. They are ready to climb the mountain. They are ready to approach the truth. Still, the Torah puts Mishpatim after Matan Torah, because only through Matan Torah, in other words, only through the and based on Matan Torah, based on divine revelation, is there a truth to our understanding? Can we even approach a truth? But the avodah of Mishpatim itself is an intellectual avodah. So what do we have? We have that the Torah first overwhelms us. It first is mevatel us. First is a revelation from above. But then the Torah wants us to understand. But that understanding is based on Matan Torah. Comes after the bittul. So the Rambam writes that when it comes to Mishpatim, a person should say EFC. A person shouldn't even want to do things like murder, chas v'shalom, theft. In other words, it's not that a person should say, well, Hashem says, therefore I'm not going to do it. A person shouldn't even want to do it. He shouldn't want to do it. It's not that the Rambam is saying that you shouldn't do it because Hashem says not to do it. Of course, we don't do it because Hashem says not to do it. The foundation of all foundations is avodas Hashem. We serve Hashem. We do things because that's what Hashem wants us to do, and we don't do that which Hashem doesn't want us to do. I mean, the foundation of everything is the Anochi Hashem. It's because I am Hashem. But the Torah wants that that Mishpatim, that the rational law should resonate with us. The Torah wants us to understand, to grasp, to sense that murder is wrong, that theft is wrong. So the section of Mishpatim comes after Matan Torah, because the Torah wants us to understand Torah, to have the Yediyah that comes after the Amunah, to bring our whole self into it, for the Tachton to go up and to lift himself up and connect with the Elyon. That's the Yisroi Mishpatim. But now, at the end of Mishpatim, we come back to Matan Torah. Because while it's true that we want to understand, we're instructed to grasp, to bring our whole self into it, the anvehu, to make the anivahu, to have a zekeli, this is my God. I get it. And therefore, I become one with him. But if the limit of our connection is our understanding, that's a very limited connection. It's a very limited connection. It's only as much as we understand. So once we maximize our understanding, we maximize as much as we can lift ourselves up, the idea, the Mishpatim. Now we come back to the story of Matan Torah. In other words, after the Zekeli, this is my God, then there's Velikei Ovi Varoi Memenu, then there's the God of my fathers who I exalt. There is the revelation of that which is so far beyond me that I cannot understand it. But this level, once we've maximized our understanding, once we've learned through Mishpatim, when we come back to Nasa v'Nishma, when we come back to the Chelek, we're conditioned that while we cannot fully understand it, but we're conditioned to connect with it on a deeper level. There's a sense of connection there. It's not just something detached anymore. This is the emunah that comes after the yediyah is a much deeper level of emunah. It's an emunah that I can really sense. It's not just an emunah that's detached. So that's after there's the Zekeli. Then there's the Velikei Ovi. Then there's a higher revelation, a deeper revelation. But now I'm conditioned, I get it. It resonates with me. Maybe I don't understand it. But it affects my condition. The Tachton becomes an Elyon, goes up. Yalul Elyonim goes up to the Elyonim. He doesn't become an Elyon, he goes up to the Elyonim. As a Tachton, but he's now up and connected with the Elyonim. So, the first level of Emunah, we didn't do anything for it. We don't even mention it in the Shira. We don't even mention it. After we go through the work of the Zekeli, then we have the Velikei Ovi. Then there's the God of my fathers, the way it affects me. So these are the three steps. We begin with Matan Torah, just a revelation from above that nullifies us. We go through Mishpatim, the work of grasping and knowing as much as we can. And we come back to a Chelek, Basar B'Cholov. We come back to Nasa v'Nishma. But now it's a whole different Chelek. It's a whole different Nasa v'Nishma. Because in the condition of the post-Mishpatim, it feels almost like Mishpatim. There's a sense that it resonates with me. That I can attach myself to this. That the Tachton is Yalul Elyonim, can actually go up and is ready to become connected with the Elyon. There's an aniva there's a connection there, even in the Varoi Memenu, even in that which is so distant from me. There's still a sense of connection. So the novel idea of the Sikha is not that we have to practice Mishpatim like they're Chukim. That's described in many other Sikhas. Here the Rabbi is telling us we have to reach a state that even Chukim becomes somewhat like Mishpatim. It can resonate. Our conditioning is such, we're spiritually conditioned that we can't understand, that we can somehow attach ourselves and feel close to these mitzvahs that are beyond rationale, to the Nasa v'Nishma, to the Matan Torah after the Mishpatim. The choik is also like a mishpat, because I am here with myself, as myself, in my developed self, in my elevated self, that now is ready to become attached to something far greater than I can otherwise understand. And to close, the Rabbi says that in Chassidus, we have also these three levels. We have the Baal Shem Tov, which represents the idea of the Parsha of Yisrei, a revelation which just came from above, a sense of emunah, bittul, beyond understanding. Then we have the Alter Rebbe, Chassidus Chabad, which is the development of and the purpose of the revelation of Baal Shem Tov is so that it becomes understood, it becomes part of our psyche, it becomes part of who we are. Like Rabbi Yitzchak Abarditchev said, that we all ate from one bowl, but the Alter Rebbe, the Litvak, he said, ate the smet, took the choicest parts, really developed Chassidus for what it was supposed to be. It wasn't just supposed to stay above us, but it was supposed to enter and become part of our thinking process, Chassidus Chabad, to understand it the best we can. But once we understand to the deepest level that we can, we reach a level that we understand tachlis the idea that ultimately we will not know, ultimately we do not know. But we're connected. We feel connected to that which we do not know. It's not just beyond us, we actually feel connected to that. And this brings Mashiach, who teaches on an entirely different level, who reveals through Re'iyah, who reveals to us, and we become one with that which we cannot know and do not know. So in summary, 3 steps: Matan Torah, Mishpatim, and the story of Matan Torah that comes after Mishpatim. There's the gift of Emunah, there's Yediyah, developing our knowledge of Hashem, and then there's the Emunah, the way it comes after Yediyah. There is that which is so much greater than us and beyond us, overwhelms us, bittul. But then we work on ourselves and we develop ourselves, and we go up. The tachton goes up as a tachton, using all of its faculties of intellect and emotion to the greatest degree that it can. And then it's ready for an even higher revelation that it cannot grasp, yet it can connect with.